Please note that this podcast is chronologically out of order. If it's being mistaken to be actually an episode podcast that I wanted to have chronologically in order according to my listing written on paper, please forgive me that due to the fact that my month-long hiatus from the start of 2015 may have prolonged your time to wait for, have you guys wait for me to make a new video or so, or a video discussion of any topic. Doesn't have to be Power Rangers related or whatnot. Please forgive me. Despite the long hiatus, I decided to release new videos sometime in January, the beginning of 2015. Forgive me, but here is today's topic. I suppose this is probably one that you probably haven't heard of, and probably a topic that is probably familiar to you, and probably one based on a previous video I did the previous year in the previous season. Enjoy. Greetings, Anthony Mars Jr. on the brand new, newly retitled PRLG 2014's video podcasts and commentaries known as now the Terra Venture Podcasts. And I bring you all to podcast episode 127. At the time when this was being made, chronologically out of order, if you will, presented by my self-devoted fan page on Facebook, and so on. Not so long ago, back in podcast episode 57, 58, I suppose. If you guys remember doing if you guys remember me doing a video podcast and discussion when my microphone was echoing so muffled that guys could barely hear my voice in those videos at the time earlier last year in the spring, summer, and whatnot, until I had to fix my microphone problem back in August of last year. I did, however, a movie rant on a movie that you guys pretty much do like to this point, even after 7 years. And, today, I think to spend my time not discussing anything Power Rangers related, but there is a movie. Yes, you guys know what that movie I'm talking about and why I'm discussing it. And according to this podcast's title for today and tonight, is that I'm discussing something about that. Okay, I'm losing track here. If you guys remember my movie rant on G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra from last year, from PRLG 2014's video podcasts last year, in my 57th video podcast known as my second movie rant, following my movie rant on the original Spider-Man trilogy directed by Sam Raimi, and in between it was my movie rant on Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man films. The G.I. Joe movies' movie rant video was the second I have done, and then after that was the Spider-Man movies Mark Webb series / Andrew Garfield movie rant video that I did, part of PRLG 2014's movie rants. Since I'm no longer doing movie reviews, if you guys remember me doing only just to this point 6 movie reviews from Spider-Man 3 to American Psycho, the reason why I haven't did no further movie reviews of any movies you guys like is because I've been busy doing, my thing, and as well as dealing with my personal life outside of these videos. So forgive me. I'll promise I'll not to interfere with talking about my history with such stuff that everybody likes in conjunction to what I know about of the actual source material. So pardon and forgive me, I will not discuss or talk about this stuff anymore, even throughout the beginning of season 3 of PRLG 2014's podcasts, movie reviews, movie rants, toy reviews, and anything else, and even vlogs discussing about myself. It's only been now, how many years since the release of G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra? 7 years since 2009, I suppose, I guess, because I've just lost track. No, actually, it's been 6 years. I have to be correct on this because I just lost track because I keep thinking about back in 2010, 2011 that I used to do a Power Rangers fan film that was inspired by the look and concept of G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra. Because albeit, G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra, okay, for all you G.I. Joe fans out there, I have to say, and I hope you guys have to hear what I have to say about this film because I know it's been only 6 years since this movie has been out. And this morning, I got up this morning. I had to do a rewatch on this movie and think back of why I was so hyped up about the film, and knowing that G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra, to be honest, wasn't really that much of a good film. It wasn't really a good film at all. Period. So I have to say to myself that why did I get so hyped up about this? I think I think I had to say this because first off, this is my belief of saying that ever since the new G.I. Joe movie Retaliation came out in 2013, I thought that the G.I. Joe franchise is dead already. Well, the G.I. Joe franchise got ruined by the release of this film. I mean, not Retaliation, but this movie is what started it first, the death of the G.I. Joe franchise. Though the franchise was killed before, back in 1994, when the original Real American Hero toy line was diminished. Because, well, remember when the Kenner division did a couple of G.I. Joe toys and they wasn't working out with articulation points and, terrible paint jobs of the action figures and terrible head molds on characters. Well, I didn't know nothing about this because I wasn't a G.I. Joe fan to begin with growing up. But what made me become a Joe fan was when I saw the G.I. Joe cartoon Sigma 6 prior to this to the first live action G.I. Joe film, and even the Spy Troops movie and the Bella vs. Venom movie, direct to DVD movies. And but as soon as when I heard of G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra, the first live action G.I. Joe film that we still know from 2009, directed by yours truly, the ever ambiguously infamous film director Stephen Sommers, I mean, I just really have to come up and say to this. According to today's podcast video title, Why I Hate G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra, and a full video topic, I feel like I need to come up here and say what I have to say about Rise of Cobra, and then I'm off for today and tonight until tomorrow or the next day's video podcast. Because furthermore, thinking G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra was a great film, it had great action and a good story, I realized based on other people's opinions, and even though this is the film that nobody liked, I mean, if Retaliation was worse, then I don't know what to say about it to you, but hey, I mean, at least they tried their best to do a good G.I. Joe film, but Rise of Cobra, to be honest, looked at too much like how my Power Rangers, fan film turned out back in the days before I was even known on YouTube a little by a couple of subscribers on this channel. And then prior to that, Anthony March 1, when I did a Power Rangers fan film that almost looked like G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra, but it looked like something, based on outside of it as, part of my personal life as it took in place. But Rise of Cobra wasn't really that good of a film, to be honest. And I have to realize, based on the amount of negative criticism this movie had taken back six years ago, and probably still today, and then I also have to cope up, also by the end of the video, I'll also discuss how the heck did this movie, although despite the negative criticism the movie had 6 years prior, got a cult following. And yes, although I will talk about some of the things I don't like, a lot of things, it started to dawn on me why I feel that Rise of Cobra wasn't really a good movie to start off with at all, and just go ahead and talk about half of the good stuff that was good about this movie, and then I'll get this movie out of my hair. Because as soon as after I'm done talking about the positive stuff, I'm going to go ahead and rip apart some of the things I hate about Rise of Cobra, and then, hear what I have, and you're probably going to have to understand and clear, since my microphone is in very full-on bass, to hear what I have to say about this film. And I feel like I need to go somewhere outside from here where there is no utter distraction, so hold on for a second. Well, since I can't go anywhere around in this house where there is dead silence, because if you guys can barely hear me, because if you remember last year on the channel when I did videos like this, all I could hear is, like what you hear, for example, those airplanes flying around my house. which has always been an utter distraction because because you see, my room is like, it's like a bomb shelter in here all the time. It's like, you guys can barely hear what I be saying. It's like when I hear, I mean, I can't be contradicting and dictating sounds by, like, what's that word I'm looking for? Def toning me out or whatever. And toning me out and just like, or phone me out. That's why you guys can never barely hear what I be saying. Even in certain things I'm trying to say to get you guys convinced by what I'm talking about. And then there you go, what I have to say. But anyway, about the positives and the negative criticisms. When I first saw this, when I first heard of when I first heard of G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra coming out back in the summer of 2009, well, because to be honest, like the summer of 2007, 2009's summer season wasn't all that impressive. I can't even think of one good movie from 2009's summer season that was better than the rest. When knowing this and Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, and also albeit Terminator Salvation being the worst of the summer and the worst of 2009 and the worst of the decade, and pretty much one of the top worst movies of all time. But seeing G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra being on the bottom list on everyone's list of, whatever kind of action movies or whatnot, it's like, this is that kind of movie that people would just rather tend to avoid. Well, aside from the negatives, which I'll get to pretty much sooner or later in this video. Excuse me, sorry, my throat is clogged up with mucus. I want to talk about the story. Well, everybody knows the story of Rise of Cobra, compared to as much as everybody has already been acknowledged by the story for Retaliation. But to be honest, I feel that the plot for Rise of Cobra is a bit cliche, and about the plot of we know the portion of the plot being about Duke and Ripcord, two soldier inductees to be indicted into G.I. Joe to join the G.I. Joe team in order to take down James McCullen, who will later become Destro, to create this armament sort of mechanized weapon known as the nanomite warheads to smoke out in the entire world, and the Joes has to race against time to get the nanomite warheads before Cobra can get their hands on them and nuke the whole world with nanomites and have everyone as a new fleet of soldiers, whatever. But even that tagline, well, I'll get to that in a moment. I think that's part of my negative criticisms about that. After a high-tech secret weapon is stolen by the mysterious Cobra organization, the G.I. Joe team must race against time to stop Cobra from using the weapon and plunging the world from chaos. Well, that's pretty much the plot. But to be honest, that's one of the few criticisms I'll get to in a moment. But there are a few things, I'll probably criticize the plot in a few moments, but I just gotta talk about some of the best things of Rise of Cobra. I think there's only a few besties of it, but I'm not gonna go ahead and say almost everything about Rise of Cobra was great. There hardly isn't anything. No wonder people hate this movie so much. I feel that the first thing that was a positive about Rise of Cobra would have to be, half of the casting. I'm not going to say all the actors were perfect casting choices, but I feel that the two positives of the movie that pretty much stole the show for me was Channing Tatum, who played Duke, and Marlon Wayans, who played Ripcord, and as well as Rachel Nichols, who played Scarlet. I was really skeptical by the casting. Well, I'll start with Marlon Wayans because I feel that this was the most casting consideration for a G.I. Joe character, iconic as that character was, where, people were skeptical that they turned him into a black character. Well, although the G.I. Joe team in this movie has two black guys in the team, but when we look at Retaliation, they pretty much only had like one black character. I don't think The Rock counts what he played Roadblock in that one. You see, when I heard of Rise of Cobra coming out, and when I heard that Marlon Wayans of the Wayans brothers being in the G.I. Joe movie, I was kind of skeptical at first, hearing that Marlon would make an appearance as a G.I. Joe character. And I said to myself, how the heck is he going to pull off Ripcord? I've never seen him do anything serious in movies, but when I watch his comedy films, like the scary movie films and whatnot, White Chicks, usually Marlon is always, has always been comic relief nonstop all around. But hey, at least he can try to do some seriousness to his character and, make him a bit more adjacent to Duke's character as his longtime partner who was being ambushed by the Baroness and a couple of Neo Vipers, which should have been just, the Cobra Troopers like in the cartoons and the original toys and whatnot. And as soon as when I saw, but again, I just thought that Ripcord was, he was one of the best characters of the film. And although he can be a bit vain a little bit at times, as soon as following Duke's capture by Baroness and Storm Shadow back at the end of their Paris pursuit sequence, and when he was brought to the Arctic to Cobra, that's when he started to get a bit vain. And that's what I liked. And although even as much to Scarlett saying that at times he can get very emotional, I felt that was kind of cliche and kind of corny a little bit. Now, Channing Tatum is like the main star of this film. Well, like a couple of actors that I know from movies from the 2000s, since the 2000s was the decade of my rising sort of, thing, that Channing Tatum, he was, people were very skeptical that he was going to be Duke in G.I. Joe the first time they heard of him, because people, back then they didn't like Channing Tatum. I bet half of you guys don't like Channing Tatum now compared to what you guys didn't. Why you guys didn't like him then? And I mean, when he started out in movies like Step Up and movies like that, and just like go ahead and say that. Well, I don't think he should be Duke in this movie. He should have been in this movie. Although when Tatum was cast as the character, he said that the movie was like X-Men, Mission Impossible, and some other movie, all in glorified war. I forgot what the quote was. I mean, it's just whatever he said, because I heard it from the Wikipedia article for this movie, for the casting excerpt of the article. And when he said that, but I just didn't think he was, at first I was, by the time when I saw the actual movie, when I saw promos and everything, I thought he looked real good and I thought he was the perfect choice for Duke. But before Channing Tatum was cast as Duke in G.I. Joe, there were two actors I can think of from the top of my head, well, according to who should have been Duke in the movie instead of Tatum. Mark Wahlberg, who would later, however, would appear in Transformers Age of Extinction as Cade Yeager, and Sam Worthington, who we all know from the Clash of the Titans remake and whatnot, and what other movies. And he would have been Duke, but Channing Tatum looked a bit more like Duke in these two movies that we have, and even the toy lines had a great speck of likeness to his character with action figures of his character with his face on it. Kudos for Hasbro for doing that. But though some people say that his acting is a bit wooden, it's bland, it kind of slows the film's pacing down, even the story's pacing, of all things. And I don't think I tend to disagree that Channing Tatum, after watching G.I. Joe, I just started to like his acting. I started to like him as an actor, and I also like him as a person in general. And I also definitely do like his character of Duke in these two G.I. Joe films, but his performance kind of undertoned by some of the bad stuff. Once in a while I'll get to it. Why I feel that this movie is the worst. And the thing Retaliation is so underrated. Rise of Cobra is underrated. Because no offense, Rise of Cobra is a deeply underrated film. And one of the deeply underrated films of 2009 and one of the deeply underrated films of the 2000s and one of the deeply underrated live action movies based on anything of other media of all time. Because to be honest, though, this is a film that nobody cared about still. So I understand people's pain from 6 years prior to now to an extent why there are people that still hate this film. But then again, but still again, Channing Tatum did a superb choice for Duke. He was an awesome casting choice for the role. And kudos to his performance. But although even though his there was a I'm not going to repeat what the critics said. Damn, how many times when I do podcasts airplanes have to fly around my house, especially where I'm at, because this is, my videos are always being recorded in this room, my room. And why does it always has to happen here? It's like that's the airplane's way of saying, I need to shut the hell up. I don't. People doesn't care what I talk about or what I have to say. Really. Scarlett was also good in this film. Rachel Nichols was a good casting choice, and I think she was the better female character in this movie than the Baroness, which I'll be honest, I'll get to in a moment when I talk about the villain characters, because I feel that the Cobra characters, now they're one of the many things why I hated this film and why I hated their performances in this movie, which I'll get to when I get to the negative criticism portion. And talk about some of the things that I don't like about, the film. And I feel that Scarlett was the better acted female the better acted female character in this movie. And she was intelligent. She was a bit conservative, a bit direct in a way. And even though in the film he did have somewhat the hots for Scarlett, Ripcord had the hots for Scarlett, but when knowing Ripcord and knowing that with his affection for Scarlett has something for Snake Eyes, the mutant ninja that a lot of people of the G.I. Joe lore likes. And speaking of Snake Eyes was pretty much also another major positive why this movie was pretty good in some areas. But when we get to Retaliation, Snake Eyes, although like in all iterations of G.I. Joe that we all know, Snake Eyes doesn't talk and doesn't speak, but his body language pretty much is the silent talking, because that's what Snake Eyes' character was since his inception with the revitalized A Real American Hero franchise, thanks to Larry Hama, who did the comics of G.I. Joe back in the 80s for Marvel Comics. And although I feel that aside from the flashback scenes for the movie, I feel that Snake Eyes and Storm Shadows' flashback scenes were the better flashbacks than the flashbacks for the Joe and Cobra characters. Duke and the Baroness and Cobra Commander, who had the most majority of flashbacks in this film. And it's like we don't get no flashbacks for Scarlett and Ripcord and whatnot. That's just kind of low. And it's like supposed we have the flashbacks devoted to mostly Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow, because I feel that people that were fans of G.I. Joe longer than I have, because knowing me, I've always been a fan of Power Rangers my whole life as a child and up to now. And, coming into the G.I. Joe stuff so late with, starting with, the Spy Troops, Sigma 6 and this, I just don't think it's, like, should I really even, I don't know. And, but anyway, though, but what also got my attention of Snake Eyes' actor, Ray Park. I understand Ray Park is very familiar to me when I think of him. That Ray Park, before he even played Snake Eyes, he also, everybody knows he was Darth Maul in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, which is still one of everyone's most hated Star Wars movies of the prequel trilogy, and even Toad in the first X-Men movie. I hated to see Toad go away in the first one of that franchise. I thought Toad was a pretty good character. But he seemed to be a bit waste of space and was no potential. Either way, he was still a good character in that film. There are a couple of characters in the G.I. Joe slots that I felt that was waste of space, like Breaker, who's the Joe's communication specialist and hacker. And for some reason, though, I feel that Breaker was waste of space. And, even though he didn't do much, it didn't have no action scenes, but he was just a communication specialist and hacker, and also has passion for bubblegum, like in homage to his original character counterpart from other iterations of G.I. Joe that we know. And Cover Girl. Cover Girl was another character that was also considered waste of space. If, suppose that we just kept Scarlett as you know, the only female Joe for right now in this movie, and CoverGirl was not present because there wasn't nothing much that the movie did with CoverGirl and her character. Because to be honest, CoverGirl is a pathetic, boring, bland character for the Joes. I mean, if there was a better, if there was, well, you know, there is another female GI Joe character that had much more potential than she could, and that would be Lady J. Although Lady J Lady J didn't appear in any of these movies until Retaliation, so you know that pain there. But CoverGirl, she was purely nothing. She was just waste of space. No offensive, regardless. Now, aside from the Joe characters, there is some things, another piece of positives I did like about the film. I did somehow pretty much did appreciate the film's visual aesthetic, which kind of looks very reminiscent to a militaristic movie set in the future. But I've always was fond of the militaristic visual aesthetic set in the futuristic style. And the aesthetic always got me when I first saw the movie and saw promotional images and images from when they were filming the movie and all. I thought the production design was okay, but when I look back at it now, it doesn't really seem all that futuristic. I feel that it's a bit over the top futuristic. Much to like, let's say, in some other movie I can't think of from the top of my head that has this kind of futuristic setting. I'm not going to say J.J. Abrams' Star Trek movie because that came out the same year this did, Terminator Salvation, and Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. So I'm not going to say that J.J. Abrams' Star Trek movie had better futuristic visual aesthetic for the within the interiors of the Enterprise ship. And G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra's futuristic designs of the pit, the entire underground command center of the G.I. Joe team being not so futuristic. But although in the command room where General Hawk and the other Joe operatives are monitoring Cobra's attacks all the time, that looks exactly how it seems. And also, despite the fact it kind of does look like something out of a video game, I can't think of the name of a video game. It's like if I say it looks like Mega Man X command mission with this command center, or from Marvel Ultimate Alliance or whatever, I can go ahead and say, well, their command center is pretty much an homage to that, or homage to any other command center with a round hologram fort base sort of thing to do. Okay, my speech is getting scrambled again. That's one of my criticisms about why I did podcasts and videos like this before. And I'm not going to say the special effects were the best in this movie. They just wasn't. And there's something else about this movie that was a positive. I can't think of it, and I'm not going to go by the top. I just can't think of it from the top of my head. The flashbacks for Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow scenes. The Joe characters, what were the best Joe characters and who was just waste of space. And also the small information of the premise that was okay, but that's still part of my negative portion of why I feel that Rise of Cobra, when I think of it now, is kind of boring, and why I feel that it's not one of the best live action G.I. Joe adaptations I've seen in my life. So what's the point? The other characters, however, were good, like Jonathan Pryce playing the role of the President of the United States. Now, suppose at the time when this movie was filmed, what if they had a fictionalized version of Barack Obama in this movie? I mean, can anyone picture that in their heads? Not exactly, because I feel that if Obama saw this movie and he saw a fictionalized version of, he saw an actor that tried his hard to resemble Obama in real life, and Obama himself saw this movie and saw a fictionalized version of him. Well, yeah, we've had fictionalized versions of President Obama before in other media, like in an issue of the Amazing Spider-Man issue something back in 2009, and also in an episode of South Park that aired that year. But I just can't think of no other way to do a fictionalized version of Obama. And then even hell, yes, Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen made a reference to Obama in their movie, but he was never seen. So there's your point there. I think those are the only few positives about Rise of Cobra. Okay, so here we are to this portion of this video. So I guess you guys better go ahead and hear what I have to say about this. Talk about the the stuff that made the Rise of Cobra one of the most hated action movies, and why I myself, even for a somewhat on and off kind of GI Joe fan, why do I hate the Rise of Cobra? So you guys might as well, if you guys don't want to hear me talk about the stuff that I think Rise of Cobra sucked at and suffered from, you guys might as well have to tune out from this portion of the video and tune into something else, or go to someone else's video if for your free will, because I know some of you people don't like the Rise of Cobra and you guys don't want to hear me ripping a part of it, because I understand there had been too many people before I have already ripped on this movie, because, well, knowing that the movie was, sort of like live action CG filled garbage. So I'll go ahead and say what are the bad things and what are the things I have to nitpick on Rise of Cobra, and just, go ahead to the contrary about the things that, so much for the stuff that I covered for this movie and some of the things that I hate about Rise of Cobra, and, and point out my criticism why I feel that The Rise of Cobra was not a good film to G.I. Joe, and it just wasn't good. So I'll just go ahead again and just rip on this movie and nitpick a couple of things. Let me start with the title. The Rise of Cobra. What does it mean? Is it supposed to be an origin story of Cobra, or is it just like a blend of G.I. Joe's origin with the Cobra origin? I don't get it. I mean, I appreciate the title, but I just feel so, like, cluttered up and kind of confused with the way how they're going with the film, and I feel like it doesn't feel like The Rise of Cobra at all. It feels like it focused more on G.I. Joe and minimally on Cobra's, the Cobra organization, and think that Cobra didn't even have that much focus. Yeah, sure, there has been dozens of focus on Cobra Commander and the Baroness in this film, Storm Shadow and Destro, but there just hasn't been much surrounding the mythology of Cobra. Yeah, it has already been explained in the first flashback, prologue flashback, regarding Destro's ancestry of the the McCollum family foundation and all that, but I just don't find it all that, it just doesn't feel like, but the whole movie overall didn't even feel like The Rise of Cobra. It felt like I was watching something else. And whatever else the title surrounds. Yes, the movie's plot is, again, an arms dealer comes up with a mechanized tech weapon known as nanomite warheads to obliterate an entire city and whatnot, and then using nanomites to take control of people's minds and making them like mindless cyborgs. And even though the Baroness was one of the many of the majority of those of Cobra that's being brainwashed by the nanomites, but I just don't think that, that's just total asinine. The mind control in this movie, I just don't like that aspect. I can find the aspect of mind control in other movies. Well, I'll talk about that when I get to the Baroness and talk about her, because she's pretty much one of the many reasons why I hated this movie. There's another thing I also have to hate on, and why I have to rip on Rise of Cobra, why it sucks, and something I gotta say from the top of my lungs why I don't like this movie. Oh, the second thing that The Rise of Cobra sucked at was the visual and special effects. The realistic gun shooting looked good, but the explosions and and especially the scene where the Eiffel Tower in Paris was collapsing with that green smoke, that was just over the top CGI, and that just didn't make the scene very realistic and believable enough for me. And I just feel to me that when the Baroness and Storm Shadow blew up the Eiffel Tower with that remaining warhead, that was kind of over the top with the effect. I mean, that green spreading smoke effect, ripping and terror, and and also eating up the legs of the Eiffel Tower to make it collapse. It was like it was like a building eating virus or something, and just like that was like a leftover. It seemed to, like, according to one critic, it was like a leftover effect, left over from the Ghostbusters movies. Although, despite the fact I'm not even a fan of Ghostbusters and I never will, and it was just over the top of that sequence. And I feel to me that the Eiffel Tower, and I feel that the Paris pursuit sequence was even more over the top than the rest of all the other action sequences in this movie combined. And no offense, but it's just this movie tried as hard to relate to the G.I. Joe mythos and franchise. But if I was a, let's say, producer or associate producer or writer on G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra, I would make it exactly what the G.I. Joe franchise always was. But making it like Mission Impossible, X-Men, and some other movie, James Bond, thrown into one film with G.I. Joe characters involved, that just doesn't mesh. Because G.I. Joe was always a militaristic cartoon and comic series where it revolved around just only G.I. Joe and Cobra. But when you're meshing it with elements of Mission Impossible and James Bond, that just doesn't mesh. Well, I think the Mission Impossible aspect was of the film, and in some iterations of G.I. Joe was affiliated in some cartoon incarnations like Sigma 6 and even G.I. Joe Renegades, for example. But I feel that the way how they did it in Rise of Cobra was a bit over the top, and I just didn't enjoy it, and I just did not like the style of the way how they were going for it. And the special effects and themselves, I mean, it feels unpolished. It feels like something out of a poorly executed video game for like PlayStation 2 or the Nintendo Wii. Well, at the time, Sony and Nintendo were still making games for the PlayStation 2 and Wii, while PS3 and Xbox 360 took over, because albeit the G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra video game was released on all of those platforms, and boy, that game was not good, and I still have the video game and it still sucks. The third thing I do not like about Rise of Cobra is the underwater base that Destro, Cobra Commander, and all of Cobra has. Really? That is like, when I first saw that underwater base of Cobras, that is the most over-the-top underwater base I have ever seen for a G.I. Joe movie. Ever. And they could have even did something better than that. I mean, the Arctic as a symbolized focal setting for the film's climax, and even throughout the story of Cobra's rise, the power to take down the Earth. I don't get it. I just started to realize I don't seem to get the gist of the story that much no more. I mean, I just totally lost it. I feel that the reason why, the only reason why I liked this movie was because I thought it was awesome, it was action-packed, it had great characters, but the bad stuff undermined the stuff that made me want to hate this movie for better or worse. But the underwater base sequence, especially as a climatic battle between G.I. Joe and Cobra, it feels kind of, I feel that the climax was rushed in a way. Well, I'll talk about the climax of Retaliation, but I feel, actually watching Retaliation was a snore fest than this one was. So I feel that, I like Retaliation more than this film, but I felt that Retaliation in some areas was it just made me feel like I was in a G.I. Joe Snorefest movie or something, but in which it was. But no offense, Retaliation still had better action and effects and stuff than this movie did, so go figure. And it's just the underwater battle in the Arctic, again, it was just, I understand where Stephen Sommers, the director of this film, was going with the direction of the film's climax. He wanted Cobra's underwater base and the climax to be a tribute to the James Bond movie Thunderball, which featured Roger Moore in that one. And you want to make this as G.I. Joe's tribute to that James Bond movie. However, before this movie, I never even seen Thunderball. but I would be open to see Thunderball on DVD or watch it if someone has a copy of it on DVD or streamed it somewhere on Netflix. Then I would be happy to and obliged to watch the movie for for some consumption and then compare it to compare its underwater base battle with G.I. Joe's version of that underwater battle in the Arctic and also in that Arctic base of Cobras, and then I'll see who had the better climatic sequence. Thunderball or G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra. So there you go. Go figure. The fourth thing I do not like about this movie. Aside from the flashback scenes from Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow, which is the better flashbacks, the flashbacks between Duke, the Baroness, and Cobra Commander are just totally misguided. First off, what the hell was Steven Sommers and his production team was thinking in terms of writing to make Duke and the Baroness, before the events of them being with one person in G.I. Joe, the other being in Cobra, boyfriend and girlfriend? I don't get it. And then also the Baroness and Cobra Commander, brother and sister. I'll get to that in a moment. But the thing about the Baroness and Duke as like boyfriend and girlfriend in this movie, now first off, that never happened in other iterations of G.I. Joe. I can understand. I tried to appreciate what this movie was doing with Duke and Baroness's characters, and being at first being brother. I mean boyfriend and girlfriend. I could see if they was brother and sister in some relation, and see how derivative that is. I mean, this movie tried so hard to create that relationship even further and further, but when knowing prior to Duke's time, before he even became a G.I. Joe member, and before Anna Lewis, or known as Anna de Cobra, became the Baroness and joined Cobra, it just doesn't work. I mean, I understand that what they did, in one flashback scene when Duke and Ripcord had Anna's brother Rex, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt before he played the masked, atrocious, over-the-top doctor and Cobra Commander, he would go inside this bomb shelter. He would go in this bomb bunker before the airstrike would come to where Rex would be when he goes inside that bunker, and all of a sudden, and then as soon as when somehow the airstrike was triggered way too early before Duke would even call for the airstrike, and that's one of the few criticisms why I did not like that. I feel that the pacing of that sequence of the flashback there was rushed, and it could have just extended some time to see Rex go inside the bunker and try to disarm something before the airstrike would come. But unfortunately, he is captured by Dr. Mindbender, who didn't even have that much screen time, but just only for a cameo, in the flashback, and just they just totally rushed the whole movie, really. And that's another thing that I feel that this movie was. It was rushed. I mean, the action scenes was rushed. I mean, everything about this movie was rushed. But it's just, I guess Duke should have never sent Rex inside that bunker before the airstrike would come, and then probably nuke him dead. And then, it would be Duke's fault that he left Anna's brother for dead, and just make her become, what would make her become the baddest dark bitch of the whole movie. And that's one of the things I did not like at all. And not only that, though, this whole entire movie was derivative. Well, so much for Terminator Salvation being a crappy action film. Look at this film. Okay, so this is the major pinnacle of my negative criticism toward Rise of Cobra. The Cobra characters themselves, except for Storm Shadow. Themselves. Except for Storm Shadow, who I will defend. Would you shut the hell up? Sorry. I'm going to start with Destro's character. I guess there's nothing much to talk about him. He's, like in every iteration, he's an arms dealer. He creates this advanced technology for Cobra to use to destroy and take over the world and dominate the world, and even take out the G.I. Joe team at hand and all of that. But if you look back in the original cartoons and stuff, Cobra always was a cliched villain team to take down a military heroic team known as which are the GI Joes. And I feel that, Cobra was always cliche. Was always a cliched villain organization of terrorists. And Destro in this film, I felt that his plan to use nanomites to obliterate a portion of or continents of a country in the world was also over the top, and it was cheesy and corny. And I feel that it doesn't make no further sense. I mean, if only this movie had better input to his character in terms of with that plan, that would have worked. Yes, even though Destro in this movie was played by the same guy, Christopher Eccleston, who was the 8th iteration of Doctor Who at the time. And then, and something else about his character that kind of bug me, but there's nothing much. I mean, I don't know what to say, but I feel that this version of Destro was very bland compared to, let's say, the Destro from the Renegades cartoon, or the Destro from Spy Troops. And not exactly. I guess this is the only version of Destro that was the blandest, and I felt that his character is indeed noble and intelligent, but Christopher Eccleston, he's a great actor, although I don't know him that much, but all I can know is he was the 8th incarnation of Doctor Who, although I never watched Doctor Who, but I would likely be open to watch Doctor Who. But if I would watch the episode, the season, the 8th, watch him as the 8th iteration, what episodes with him being the 8th version, the 8th Doctor, then I would go ahead and, give Doctor Who a chance, starting with his iteration. Because Doctor Who has been around way before my time, and it's been like, 1964, 63? So I don't know much about it, but still, I thought seeing him as James McCullen a lot of the time, I would expect him to be, to wear the Destro mask, because instead of seeing, this is a rare instance seeing him for an origin story to see McCullen just show his human face before his face would get burnt, in the scene where Duke encountered the Doctor when he had to take off his mask and his wig and revealed himself as Rex Lewis, and knowing that is just not really worth anything on my time here. The Bane himself, Cobra Commander, Rex Lewis, and the Doctor are just... Seriously, the Doctor, Rex Lewis, and Cobra Commander, that is like multiple personalities disorder there, right there, my friend. Because it's like, in this version of Cobra Commander for a G.I. Joe movie or any iteration, it's like Cobra Commander has multiple personalities. And that's something that Cobra Commander never had in other versions of G.I. Joe that I know. From the original Real American Hero cartoon and comics and stuff to current. And Cobra Commander never had like 2 other alter egos. Because to be honest, in all iterations of G.I. Joe as known to its fandom, although I'm a minor on and off sort of fan, Cobra Commander does not have multiple personalities. Well, even though this was the movie's intention, but I do not like that, because I've seen the original cartoons. Cobra Commander had no other personalities. I've read at least 1 or 2 comics. Cobra Commander never had 2 personalities or more. I have watched the 2 animated direct-to-DVD movies I had once, Spy Troops and Valor vs. Venom. Cobra Commander had no multiple personalities. I've watched the Sigma 6 cartoon. Again, he still doesn't have no multiple personalities. Up to this point with this film, he has multiple personalities. And that just doesn't make no sense. It doesn't make no sense at all. And it just kind of, I like the Doctor's wardrobe and his mask. And I like how Joseph Gordon-Levitt can do a deep voice of him when he just tries to do a sort of quiet, shallow, graveling sort of voice when he's the Doctor. But when he played Cobra Commander, when he revealed himself as the Cobra Commander, when he put his new mask on, it started to sound a bit grim and over the top grim sort of tone to his voice when he did it, but it just doesn't sound nothing like Cobra Commander would. I mean, if you would look back at look back and hear Chris Lotta's voice of Cobra Commander from the original Real American Hero cartoon, or listen to his voice from the Spy Troops movie or the Sigma 6 cartoon, you would hear how over the top Cobra Commander always was. Well, since the G.I. Joe franchise has evolved for now up to this point 3 decades, you know, Cobra Commander started to mature his character in other future iterations, with his voice getting deeper and less over the top. But when Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I like you as an actor, but I did not like your performance in this movie in general. But it's just his voice as Cobra Commander and the Doctor respectively was over the top. And also another thing I also wanted to point out about the Cobra Commander mask that his character had in this movie. You know, I said this before in my movie rant, if you watched it last year, that why the heck is his mask? I mean, when I first saw that mask, and when I saw promotional art, when I saw artwork and something from his file card, and I still have that same Cobra Commander action figure from this movie's toy line, and when I seen Cobra Commander's face for this movie, this did not look like Cobra Commander the way he should from the cartoons, comics, and galore. This looked at like a Star Wars, this looked at like a General Grievous Lord Zed hybrid of Cobra Commander, and, meshed into one. And actually, in fact, he looked at like more often like General Grievous from Star Wars Episode 3 than Cobra Commander from G.I. Joe. Because, like Channing Tatum said, this film was like Star Wars, Star Wars, Mission Impossible, and X-Men thrown in the glorified war, thrown in one movie with glorified war. But it just doesn't feel like, yeah, I can appreciate half of the Star Wars-esque vibes going on in this movie, but you don't go around here telling Cobra Commander saying, Duke, I am your father, or whatever. But that wouldn't sound right. But or like think of the Baroness as Princess Leia, and whoever as Han Solo, and Duke is like Luke Skywalker, because it's obvious that Duke rhymes with Luke and Luke rhymes with Duke. You get it? You get the gist of what I'm saying there? But still, I feel that his Cobra Commander mask was just a knockoff. It was a General Grievous knockoff. And not only that, he's just way over the top compared to Lord Zed and Power Rangers. And also, speaking of which, this whole entire movie, this is exactly what made me want to do that Power Rangers, what fan film of mine featuring a season of Power Rangers named after this channel and all. But that was what I was doing with that fan film. Ever since after I watched G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra and saw everything about it, that's what inspired me to do my Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film after this. Even though it would be considered copyright infringement, well, yeah, go ahead, Steven Sommers, Paramount, Hasbro, sue me for copyright infringement because I was trying to rip off this movie. Go ahead and do that. Go ahead and sue me. Zartan was the most wasted of space character. Yes, his character would be reduced for the sequel, but there's nothing much to talk about Zartan. Not even Dr. Mindbender. Now, Dr. Mindbender, he should have been saved for another film, because I feel that this movie focused on all 5 Cobra characters while there's only 8 G.I. Joes. Look at Michael Bay's first live-action Transformers movie from 2007. There were 8 Decepticons, 5 Autobots, and multiple human characters in between. But in this movie, 5 Cobra characters, 8 Joe characters. Do the math. So in total, it's like 13 characters, I think. No, 12 characters. 12 characters in total, including the President of the United States and that Wushu master that trained and learned Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes when they were kids in that flashback scene. So there you go. I'm about to get even further and further and further the more I rip on this movie. The Baroness in this movie. Oh my God. I mean, what the hell? I mean, seriously, what the hell? I mean, the Baroness. I mean, Sienna Miller. Sienna Miller. She did, I mean, when I first heard of her, I thought she looked very attractive. I thought she was going to be good in this movie as the film's main female villain, who is also the name of an iconic female villain in the G.I. Joe franchise, the only female villain present in the G.I. Joe franchise. But all of a sudden, I would appreciate seeing Sienna play the Baroness and basing her after her 1980s cartoon and comic counterpart, where she's a European noble, East European noble with a thick Russian and sexy, seductive Russian accent, yet which also sounded a bit over the top at times. But then the movie all of a sudden wanted to make her to be Duke's brainwashed ex-girlfriend. My God. And the thing Cobra Commander in this movie was derivative, the Baroness is the most derivative in this movie. And talk about chewing up the scenery. I mean, she is always so smuggy. She is cocky. She is, like, I can go on and talk about and describe her in some words, but she is so bitchy. She is like, I just really, I mean, as soon as I saw this movie, and when I saw Sienna Miller play this character, she really, really turned me fucking off. And, like, they just really went all out to make a derivative storyline to make her such a complicated character to develop from her original counterpart. And I don't understand, why do they have to make the Baroness Duke's brainwashed ex-girlfriend to work for Cobra? That never happened in the original source material. I mean, I was going to appreciate the movie for reinventing the Baroness, but I just can't sit through her character. I mean, even hell, in comparison to this movie, look back at Power Rangers RPM, for example, for all you Power Ranger fans. Well, I'm still talking to all you Joe fans. Look at RPM with Tenaya 7, for example. And when I was watching RPM 2 years ago, you know, on Netflix for an RPM 3-day weekend binge, and when I seen the way how Tenaya 7 pulled herself off as a character, she came off as annoying. She came off exactly how I seen Sienna Miller play the Baroness in this film. And not only that, though, that's exactly what undermined why I do not like Tenaya 7 as a female villain in Power Rangers, because of the way how she is, and I feel that her actress, like Sienna Miller in this movie, was terrible. And if you guys think she's a good actress, I don't know what to say to you. And I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you? But to be honest, Sienna Miller did a terrible job for the, as the character, and I don't see why in the hell was she. I mean, at first I thought it would be a good idea to cast an actress who has only been in mostly indie films in the UK. And of course, that short-lived Fox sleuth drama Keen Eddie, where she played Fiona, that character Fiona Bickerton, where she played a very mean-spirited landlord lady to Eddie, what's his name, which was Mark Valley's character. And I've seen how she acted in that show. And also in a couple of other movies I've seen her in before G.I. Joe, like Factory Girl, the Andy Warhol story, where she played Edie Sedgwick. Her character in that movie was kind of bland. Her character in that movie was bland. Then in that movie with Daniel Craig, Alfie, although I've never seen it, but I've only seen a few chunks of it on YouTube and some clips, and I felt that her acting is not all that convincing. I don't think she was that great. But G.I. Joe brought the worst of her career. I mean, she was only, in her late 20s at the time when this movie was made. 27, 28 years old, and she just really sunk this movie down to a sinking ship. And her acting in this movie was spot on awful. For a female villain in black tights, knowing me, you guys know what my pain is with female villains. Knowing me in general, I've always had this obsessive fetish for female villains in black tights to make them look sexy and, the kind that that you want that, F-U-C-K with and all. But Sienna Miller's version of the Baroness and all iterations of G.I. Joe that I've seen, I can appreciate the other versions of the Baroness and other variants of her and other media of G.I. Joe, but this is the only version of the character that I fucking hate. I fucking hate this version of the character. Sienna Miller's version is the only version of the character of all versions of all iterations of G.I. Joe that I've seen and watched. Is the only version of the character that I fucking hate. I mean, I can't even sit through, like, it says the movie only runs for 112 minutes. I can't even sit through her performance. I can't even sit through how she acts. I can't sit through, well, I can pretty much accept the cat fight that she had with Scarlet back when the G.I. Joe's command base was being attacked by Cobra and its Neo Vipers, but I just cannot sit through the rest of her other scenes in general, and not even her flashback scenes. But her flashback scenes they were just kind of derivative in a way. And this is the thing that they messed up at with this movie, especially with the Baroness. You guys should have stuck to what her character was like in the source material, being a East European intelligence officer. Cobra's one and only female intelligence officer of East European descent, instead of being an American brainwashed ex-girlfriend of Duke's. That's not what her character was in the source material. And not only that, there are more scenes with the Baroness with Storm Shadow. That doesn't look right. I did later appreciate it in G.I. Joe Renegades, but still not with this movie. But in all iterations we know, she always had a thing for Destro. But I feel that the reason why they didn't want Destro and the Baroness together in this movie is because the actor that they cast for Destro in this movie was in his late 40s going on 50s or so, but he looks like he is 60-something, and Sienna Miller, when she was playing this character that, again, I'm still bashing on, was 27, 28, 29 years old at the time when this movie was made. So go figure and do the fucking math. When I look at Destro in this movie and the Baroness being a young, hot 20-something, when really, she's not really all that hot. In the posters, it's photoshopped to make her boobs look a little big and her ass a bit big. When really, Sienna Miller is a skinny actress. Her as an actress, she is all that. She's really skinny. She doesn't have that big ass or butt. Big ass or boobs, okay? They just tried to make that. The posters is poorly photoshopped that to make it look like she's all that hot for the movie. Like she's the only thing that could save this movie from sucking. When really, it didn't even even bother to help. It just worsened the movie as it hurts my brain now. Okay, I sound a bit butthurt. I'm sorry, but that's just the truth, and the truth hurts. The truth really hurts, and I have to say it. Because this isn't the version of the Baroness that most of you Joe fans know. And knowing that it just doesn't bother to work out for the better. It kind of worked it out for the worst. And what I mean by the worst, it's like they just really butchered her character. And not only that, though, I feel that they should have never picked Sienna Miller for the character. If I was a casting director for this movie, in which I wasn't, because when this movie was about to come out and did come out, I was still in high school at the time. And I was so pumped up and hyped to see this movie. But in my expectations, following home video repeats and re-airings on TV and such, I don't really care about this movie anymore. But just looking back at it now, it's kind of tedious and boring. It's like, it didn't even have it's just the momentum I have for this movie from 2009 just really went down years later, even following the release of Retaliation. And I don't think this is I just really fucking hated Sienna Miller in this movie. And I'm so fucking glad the bitch got a Razzie Award for Worst Supporting Actress. And knowing that G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra was, of course, going to be a Razzie-worthy movie like the rest of other movies from 2009 that was Razzie-worthy, like Twilight, New Moon, and definitely Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, and Terminator: Salvation. Look at those movies. You guys can rip apart on this movie, but look back at movies from 2009 that a lot of people ripped on but would later appreciate. like Transformers: Revenge of the fuck that. But when really though, this is again, this is the worst version of the Baroness I have seen. I understand I understand where they were going with her character for this movie. They wanted her to be exactly like every other female character in today's action movies and whatnot. In black skin tight suits, over the acting all derivative and a little bit, and act all unsophisticated, and want to act like they don't care and all of that, and being a bit over the top sexist, a little bit. I don't know what to say about this, but I fucking hated Sienna Miller in this movie, and I still hate her now. And even with her being in, Clint Eastwood's new movie with Bradley Cooper, American Sniper, I still don't want to see her in that movie. I still don't. After when I heard that she got a Razzie Award for Worst Supporting Actress in this movie, I decided to let her go from, and seeing her in future films following this movie. You see, the thing is, when it comes to actresses who are whatever, and they get Razzies, when the movie gets bad reviews, but yet it's financially successful, but when you see them get Razzie Awards, half of the time you don't see those actresses until some years later. But when you see them in later movies outside from movies like this, you think that can redeem those actors, when really, I still don't want to see them after what happened to them. Like with George, look back when I seen George Clooney play Batman and Robin. I did not like the way how George Clooney played Batman, and I didn't appreciate, and I still don't appreciate him since. And even in movies like the Ocean Trilogy and whatever movies he made, like The Good German and all that, I still don't appreciate George Clooney as an actor. Not after what he did to Batman. And even Halle Berry. Sure, she played Storm in the X-Men movies and such in the meantime, but when she played Catwoman, I lost respect for Halle Berry. And so on. And some other, and even Jennifer Lopez. Although I never cared for the bitch, but she had Razzie Awards nonstop a couple of times in a few movies. But Sienna Miller, when she got her Razzie Award for her performance in G.I. Joe, this was the first instance seeing a UK actress come to America, film this movie, and then all of a sudden, once when the movie comes out and then gets savaged by critics and fans and shit, and then once when the Razzies come up the next year and begin the new decade, this generation where it's filled with crappy pop music and all and shitty movie remakes, that's when, you give her the award because she was terrible. She was a terrible villain, and not only that, she was a terrible actress! And not only that, the Baroness in this movie was also a terrible villain. Actually, in this iteration, only in terms of specs, and in some sort of perspective. I don't mean all versions of the Baroness and other versions of G.I. Joe is terrible, but this is the only version of the character that is the worst. That is the worst. I can go on and talk about the Baroness, but I need to go ahead and talk about the rest of what made the Rise of Cobra a less likely watched film. The Neo Vipers. I like the Neo Vipers, but what is the purpose? Seriously, what is the purpose for these guys? They look like stormtrooper knockoffs, wearing Army of Two sort of soldier masks on their faces. Couldn't they be like more sophisticated, make them more like a live-action homage to the original Cobra Trooper foot soldiers from the original cartoon and comics and whatnot? Really? You guys make them look like stormtrooper knockoffs in black. And I like the costume, but they were boring. To me now they look like they seem to be boring foot soldiers. And not only that, they only had like 20 Neo Vipers. You could have, Cobra Commander, you could have at least had like over 100 or 1,000 Neo Vipers in action in battle to attack the Joes. That's what would have happened. Or at least for Storm Shadow, you could have at least had some Ninja Foot Clan soldiers or those original Rajikagi foot soldiers in action. A little bit to fight off Snake Eyes, and then you'll get the Snake Eyes, your brother, your supposedly, brother, and just like try to fight him off. I just don't fucking get it with this movie anymore. Yes, it's ridiculous, over the top, but it's pretty much a guilty pleasure. I just don't understand what else I can say about this movie. And the bane of them all, the major bane of why this movie fucking sucks. Stephen fucking Sommers, the director that made this travesty of a G.I. Joe film. I mean, what the fuck possessed Paramount Pictures to even hire this god-awful film director to direct this first ever live-action G.I. Joe film? Why? Couldn't you guys get a better potential film director that can do action movies good and have it tell a very visually appealing story? Because Stephen Sommers, I've watched all of his movies prior to G.I. Joe that fucking sucked. I've seen the 2 Mummy movies he directed. They sucked. I've seen Deep Rising. That movie sucked. I've seen Van Helsing. That movie was painful and it sucked. But when it came to this movie, my God, this was the last straw for the guy. I mean, to think this was his best movie, when knowing it's a film based on a widely renowned toy, cartoon, and comic franchise like G.I. Joe, and he butchered it to make it look like one of his own movies. I mean, movies that he did that was, his worst. And why he sucked at why he sucks at directing, and why he sucks at producing, and why he sucks as a writer. Well, my Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan-film adaptation of this film with Trakina's name in it didn't even do justice in 2011, so go figure. But when it came to this as the real Hollywood blockbuster travesty that is Rise of Cobra, please give me a fucking break. I mean, it just didn't. They could have had someone else, someone who knows G.I. Joe more than this Dilwad did. Someone who wouldn't make this movie look over the top and very whatever, but just that would have. Another thing I do not like about this movie. Why the hell are the G.I. Joe's uniforms in the posters and everything else I know for this movie in terms of marketing and promotion? Why the hell do they have black suits on? They're not the X-Men. I can appreciate it with the original X-Men trilogy and as well as the X-Men movie franchise in general, we'll say for First Class in 2011 and Days of Futures Past, but why the hell you want to make the G.I. Joe like they're the X-Men, but they're a military team? I can appreciate it for Cobra Commander wearing black, or Destro, or the Baroness, but why do the G.I. Joes, every member wear black, except for Snake Eyes? I mean, Duke should have wore some camo like armor suit or that camo desert assault uniform that I liked from the first half of the movie when he was introduced in the film. Even Ripcord would have wore the same outfit. Scarlet would have wore a silver and yellow version of her original costume attire from the original Real American Hero cartoon. They could have had Roadblock in this movie instead of Heavy Duty. Well, to be honest, Heavy Duty is played by the same guy that appeared in the second Mummy film, The Mummy Returns, and, they should have had Heavy Duty out of this film and should have saved him for a sequel and just put Roadblock in there, and they could put Lady J in there instead of having Lady J in the new film, and they could have had, let's say, Flint in there instead of saving him for the new film, and everything else. And that would be my G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra. If I was to redo this movie, but I can't because it's if I did it, it would be considered copyright infringement and doing a remake. So, but I just don't understand why couldn't they do something to make this more eccentric to the original G.I. Joe source material that we all know, instead of doing it like Mission Impossible, Star Wars, X-Men, and possibly Transformers in a way. And you just. I guess I'm getting too worked up. A movie will be a movie, okay? We have to appreciate it as a work of art. If it sucks, it sucks. If it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it'll be painfully bad. And I get it, but it's just the thing about this movie is that it just crams in so much too little, and I just don't feel that when I look back at it now, it's not that great of a film. One of the other things I do not like in terms of the marketing campaign for the movie and also the movie itself, the tagline, when all else fails, they don't. What the fuck is that even supposed to represent? Couldn't it have been like, yo, Joe, or whatever, and knowing is half the battle, which is that iconic tagline of G.I. Joe, and knowing is half the battle. But unfortunately, they put, when all else fails, they don't. That's like their alternate dimension kind of way of saying, and knowing is half the battle. Well, General Hawk only said it once, and then also at the end of the climax when Heavy Duty said, yo, Joe, but that just was kind of low, it was kind of toned down a little bit. And, you know, but overall, this movie did not even feel nothing like a G.I. Joe movie. Yes, it has G.I. Joe-based characters with their names tagged to the actors, although Storm Shadow looks exactly what Storm Shadow looks, and Snake Eyes look exactly what Snake Eyes look, and Scarlet barely looks like what Scarlet looks like in the source material, but all the other characters, especially the Baroness, they don't hardly even look exactly what they look like. I mean, I appreciate Channing Tatum and Marlon Wayans' performance in this movie, and also Rachel Nichols as Scarlet, but the rest of the cast, they were terrible in this movie. Dennis Quaid, I don't even know what to say about his performance now, thinking about it, and when I sit through this movie. Well, and originally, General Hawk was supposed to appear in Retaliation, and also, based on the Wikipedia article for this movie, he was supposed to be signed on for 2 sequels that would make a G.I. Joe live-action movie trilogy, but his character says ever since when Stephen Sommers decided not to return as director for the sequel, until it became Retaliation, they dropped General Hawk, they dropped Ripcord, they dropped Scarlet, they dropped almost every character from the first movie here, except for Duke, Snake Eyes, Storm Shadow, Cobra Commander, Zartan, and the President. But yet they dropped everyone else from this movie for the new one. Well, a change will be a change, and I have to accept that change when Retaliation came out. So, but the whole movie is so over the top. Yet now it's cheesy. Late 90s. I mean, not late 90s. Late 2000s, early 2010s cheese, and it's like I don't know what to say anymore. And not only that, though, you know, also thinking. Speaking of which, and also ever since when I saw Snake Eyes' mask and such in the film. And when I look at his costume, it does. I mean, it feels to me, based on the visual aesthetic of the costumes, the set. I mean, the production design, the special effects. It feels like Stephen Sommers wanted to make a Power Rangers movie, like was compared to the up and coming Lionsgate film, by the way, than a G.I. Joe movie. Yes, when I first saw G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra, when I saw it in its full entirety, it kind of felt like I was watching Power Rangers. In this kind of modern-day setting, but with G.I. Joe characters in it. No wonder I've seen a couple of fan-made, reboot trailers for a Power Rangers reboot movie featuring footage, which I would see on YouTube. If you can go on YouTube and look up Power Rangers fan-made trailers or whatever, Power Rangers reboot movie trailer fan-made, type that in the search section of of YouTube, and you'll look at a couple of fan-made trailers I can find where there are fans that made Power Rangers reboot fan-made trailers consisting of footage from other movies that may seem akin to Power Rangers, but would also accumulate to using footage from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie from a la 1995. And even in one of the few fan trailers, there are a couple of fan trailers for Power Rangers reboot movies that would use footage from G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra, obviously. Because this movie does look like a Power Rangers movie almost. Because come to think of it, it does look like a Power Rangers movie, but it's G.I. Joe, and I get it. I get the point. But I just don't think, I don't know what else I can say about Rise of Cobra. And, thinking about it now, it's not a good film. If you guys like it, more power to you. But I no longer like this movie, and I probably just lost interest in this film. I could rather watch Retaliation more often and say fuck Rise of Cobra. But I mean, I could although I no longer buy toys for this movie anymore because this movie's now like 6 years old, going on 7. So I just might as well give up on Rise of Cobra and probably go back to buying some GI Joe toys again. Take a break on Power Ranger toy collecting and go back to GI Joe for a little bit. If the toys for Retaliation didn't do so well, then maybe I should just stop buying GI Joe stuff. Period. Because to be honest, the G.I. Joe franchise, it's been on and off sort of declining. And there's nothing good from this franchise anymore. But I hear that there will be a third G.I. Joe movie coming out in 2016, which will be the same time as I think the Infinity Wars movie, and even the new, Power Rangers reboot movie will come out and such in 2016. So we'll probably likely see a new G.I. Joe movie hit theaters in 2016 as reported, and we don't know what the third movie is going to be called, but I hear that they're going to bring Duke, Scarlet, and the Baroness back, but not sure about Ripcord or other characters that was rejected from the sequel for the third movie. But we'll find out eventually. Well, guys, I can go on and say how much I hate Rise of Cobra now and think about some of the derivative things it did. I mean, and again, back then, I used to appreciate the things that this movie did, but looking back at it now, it just kind of hurts my brain. Also, not only that, before I leave, about the Baroness, and also if you go to Watch Mojo's YouTube channel, when you go to Watch Mojo's videos for their top 10 female supervillains videos, the Baroness from this movie is on this list, because knowing that this is the only live-action G.I. Joe movie that featured the Baroness as a female villain. But every time when I think about the Baroness being added on Watch Mojo's list of best top 10 female villains in film, I say to myself, she sucked in this movie! But enough of that. But really, I mean, if you guys thought Sienna Miller did a good job as the Baroness, I'm going to be like, I don't know what to say to you guys anymore. So. But anyway, there goes my podcast on how much I hate the Rise of Cobra, and also made me think that this movie what was responsible for killing the G.I. Joe franchise. Well, hey, Hollywood helped butcher the franchise, and that's why we got 2 pretty much god-awful G.I. Joe movies. But I don't know what to say. When we get the third live-action G.I. Joe movie, I hope they'll probably do it and do it better and make it more accurate. At least Retaliation slowly helped the G.I. Joe franchise to make it look exactly what the franchise had in its roots back in the 80s, and we'll try to continue on with the upcoming third G.I. Joe movie. But Rise of Cobra, this was like a Power Rangers, Star Wars, Mission Impossible, James Bond, X-Men, Transformers kind of knockoff of a film, but with G.I. Joe in it. But I don't know what else I can say about this, but if the movie will continue having a cult following, although despite the fact the movie was no way in the world hardly even liked by not one person, not one moviegoer or critic, but yet it only made over $300 and some million at the box office, resulting it to be a modest box office success at the slightest. But knowing that this is still that G.I. Joe movie this is the same G.I. Joe movie that nobody likes. I mean, if you guys liked it just for the action, that's great. If you guys liked it for Channing Tatum and Rachel Nichols and Marlon Wayans making this movie, that's great. If you guys liked it for the Baroness, I don't know what to say to you guys, but fuck that. So anyway, this is Anthony Mars Jr. on PR Lost Galaxy 2014. Thanks for watching my podcast. Please subscribe and so forth. Terra Ventures Conference Hall. And this podcast is now over. Thanks for watching.